News this morning on ESPN and Get Up. The Cowboys and Steelers are working to finalize a trade that will send wide receiver George Pickens to Dallas in exchange for draft pick compensation. Shefty dropping that bomb from a plane earlier this morning. He's on an airplane, and the trade is, I didn't like the phrasing of that. The trade is expected to include a third-round pick, other pick swaps, and is expected to be finalized today. Let me run through a few brief notes here. Michael Wilbon, Peter Schrager jumped in from Brooklyn. Dan Orlovsky is up early with us this morning. Shefty then tweeted, "These are the moves the Cowboys have made this offseason in trades. They've acquired George Pickens. They acquired quarterback Joe Milton, young. They acquired the linebacker Kenneth Murray. They acquired cornerback Kaiir Elam. So they've been busy in the trade department as well, obviously, as a really good draft. What are the Cowboys doing? What exactly is their plan here?"
Well, look, they hired Brian Schottenheimer in the most unorthodox way we've seen a head coach be hired in recent years, and let their previous coach's contract just expire, did not interview all the top other candidates and hired from within. And Schotty's whole thing has been, don't worry about sizzle, don't worry about this. We're all about culture, 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 culture. George Pickens has a history of having temper tantrums on the sidelines, and when he doesn't get the ball, throws his helmet and does the histrionics when the game is not going his way. So on paper, you look at this and say, well, what are you about? You about drafting an offensive lineman, 12th overall, over a skill position player because that's what we're going to be, meat and potatoes? Or is this a panic move saying, all right, we're going to trade a third-round pick this far from the draft, not knowing what that third-round pick will be, to go get our number 2 wide receiver? I will say this. I've spoken to Steelers sources over the last year because Pickens would have national games where he's throwing his helmet and crying on the sideline, the whole thing. It's not him necessarily Monday to Saturday. He is just one of those guys on the field that is so emotional. So if he's not a culture ruiner, he's not a guy that's going to upset the apple cart, he is a great number 2 option to CeeDee Lamb. The question is, if he does have that major year, is it a one-year deal because it's the final year of his contract? You got to pay him at some point anyway.
Right, and the Steelers clearly had decided they weren't going to do that. And so the Cowboys will take a chance. He's sort of a distressed asset, Dan. If you look at it that way, he is a player whose talent obviously far exceeds the cost it took to go out and get him, the price they paid, meaning a future third-round pick. So to be honest with you, I kind of love it from a Cowboys perspective. If you catch lightning in a bottle here, this could wind up being a significant improvement to their offense.
Greeny, he averages 16 yards a catch the past couple seasons, and he didn't play with Dak Prescott over that period of time. Cowboys got a chance. If George Pickens plays to the way that he has played over the past couple seasons, this would be a top 8 offense in the NFL. I've talked about it. I think this offensive line is going to be one of the better ones in the NFL by the end of the season. We all know CeeDee Lamb is a superstar. Now you're adding George Pickens in, who averaged 16 yards a catch with the revolving door at quarterback. This has got a chance to be a pretty darn good offense when it comes to what happens in Dallas. And you're talking about the ability to push the ball downfield. I say this all the time, football's math. You only got 11 to play. So we're talking about a team that this offensive line develops and can run the ball just a little bit. CeeDee Lamb on one side, George Pickens on the other. This is going to be a really good offense down in Dallas. I guess my biggest takeaway, Greeny, before Mr. Wilbon gets in is trades. Why did Pittsburgh trade him then? If he's not a problem.
Right.
Look, they're getting rid of him.
At a certain point, you have a guy who's going to the final year of his contract. They did bring in DK Metcalf. And if Mike Tomlin's done with you and Mike Tomlin doesn't think you're worth the squeeze, well, then maybe that's a message to the rest of the league. They were talking about this before the draft. Trade talks then went off the table, and then it really heated up last night. But to your point, desperate times calls for desperate measures. The Cowboys are looking at their roster right now. They didn't get that number 2 wide receiver. They now have that number 2 wide receiver, and they're willing to roll the dice saying, culturally, we got this. Whatever happened on the sidelines there in Pittsburgh, that's on them.
Mike. Those two things are in conflict. You're going to talk culture, and then you're going to do this? Okay, Monday through Friday, I'm sorry.
I hear you.
Sunday, what's that behavior like? How does that go down in the locker room? Is your room strong enough to either really change his behavior, incorporate it, or ignore it? Because it's got to be one of those three. Or the math, and I hear Dan loud and clear, and of course he's right about that. But, you know, people sabotage teams. And for Mike Tomlin to say, I've had enough, that would send some sort of message to me.
Right. And anytime you can acquire a player from another team, you have to ask yourself the question, why is that player available? The only other thing I'll say is most teams don't pay 2 wide receivers big money. They've paid DK Metcalf big money, so maybe they decided they weren't going to pay him. This is not the same as Cincinnati, which was sort of a unique situation. Go ahead, Danny.
Teams do it all the time nowadays, Greeny. Miami, Philadelphia, Cincinnati.
Hey, guys, that big.
Where did Aaron Rodgers play into this conversation? Where did he play into the decision? Did he know that this was potentially going to be the case in Pittsburgh? Is that part of the Monday through Saturday? He's not a culture killer, but there were sideline blowups. Did Pittsburgh maybe think that, we're going to get Rodgers, and so maybe him and Aaron would butt heads and not coexist, and so that was a move. And I know it's been talked about. Does this reignite the addition of a Brandon Ayuk? Because I think it from Pittsburgh's perspective, Greeny, and I go, if I was Aaron Rodgers, what would be appealing about going to play football in Pittsburgh right now for me? As I sit here this morning, Wednesday morning, May 7th, I get only George Pickens. That doesn't sound like a place that a 42-year-old quarterback should go and play.
DK, yes, but correct. And Matt Miller, our Matt Miller, I was just looking through some of the reaction during our commercial break, tweeted, and I wonder if you would agree with this. Mike Wilbon, I'll start with you. This is the worst roster the Steelers have had in the Mike Tomlin era. So as long as Tomlin's never had a losing season, he's been there. I mean, right this minute, that cupboard is bare, and that defense is getting
walk. No, you don't let him walk, you push him.
Yeah.
And look, that team, they stopped pulling on the rope at the end of the year. There's no other way to say it. You watched that playoff game last year.
And Russell Wilson and Justin Fields weren't it either. So you have this giant quarterback question. All this is moot unless you know who the quarterback is. And to Michael's point, look, you're bringing in Rodgers. At this point, he's missing April practices. He's 41 years old. We're now in May. This isn't one of those where you could, like, Tom Brady might have come to the Buccaneers at 45, but when he got there, it was, all right, during the COVID season, we're all going to get together right today. Let's go. We're going to make this. He was a culture lifter. So to me, it's not George Pickens is almost secondary to this thing. What's Rodgers' deal today?
Well, I mean, wouldn't that be delightful to know that? Danny, final word.
It's the least appealing offense situation-wise in the NFL right now. It's the least scary offense in the NFL right now. And if Pittsburgh adds Aaron Rodgers, I honestly don't think that changes all that much. This is an offense that, outside of DK, is devoid of big-time talent. Robert Woods is a nice player. Calvin Austin's a good player. Freiermuth's an up-and-coming tight end. But this is the least scary offense in the NFL right now.
A lot of people like that running back, Caleb Johnson, that they just drafted. But we'll see what winds up happening. I completely agree. This is an offense that will scare no one in a division with a lot of scary offenses.
But what if they had Shador?
Much more on that. They could have taken Shador at any point Friday. And what are you doing to me over there? Think I didn't get enough of that when I was back in Green Bay? All right, awesome. Leave that there for the moment. We can finally now get here.
Greeny and I have been talking about me being in New York on the way to Boston, by the way, for the night, for a few days. I texted him. And I just said, I will come on as long as the name Aaron Rodgers cannot possibly come up.
He got
and I get here 6:45 this morning, and Greeny says about this breaking news. So we will have to talk more about the most now, as great as he is, first ballot Hall of Fame. Sure. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. He is now